Hi, I'm Paige. Welcome back to my kitchen. You're watching the next episode of Doughin' It with Paigey. Tonight is date night, so we are actually going to be making homemade pizzas, and we are going to be using the recipe from the cookbook, Bread Baking for Beginners by Bonnie Ohara. Now, I have to head to work here in just a little bit, but I thought it would be really nice to go ahead and have my dough prepared when I get home, so as soon as I get here, I don't even have to worry about the dough. I can just get our pizzas ready, prepared, and get them ready to cook. So for my dough, I'm actually going to be going back to the second recipe in this cookbook, which is the 8-hour fermentation bread recipe. Now this is a great way for you to leave your dough, let it hang out, develop some really nice flavor while you're gonna be gone. And then when you come back, your dough is folded, it's risen, it's ready to go. Now the only differences between the pizza dough recipe and the 8-hour fermentation bread recipe is the rise times and the amount of yeast used. So we're using a smaller amount of yeast and letting it rise for 8 hours instead of 1.5 to 2 hours. I think that using the 8-hour fermentation bread recipe is a really great way to make homemade pizzas at home, especially if you're wanting to make them as soon as you get home from work. Now let's go ahead and start mixing our dough. Here are the ingredients we'll need for our dough today. We're going to start off by mixing our water and yeast until it's nice and bubbly. I'm going to add the flour on top of the water and yeast mixture, and then I will add the salt on top of the flour. And I'm going to just mix my dough by hand until it's well combined. Now, if you're a little afraid of getting sticky, you can use a spoon or a rubber spatula to mix the dough, but I prefer to mix by hand just because I can tell when the ingredients are really combined and well mixed together. Now you see when I stretch it, it's just breaking off. That means it is not mixed well and needs a little bit more time. So just keep squeezing it, keep stirring it up until you get the dough nice and stretchy. I'm gonna mix it for about another minute or so probably. Right, it's getting that good stretch, but I can still feel some thicker clumps of flour in the dough, so I'm just gonna keep working with this. All right, this is looking good. All right, we're gonna let this rest for about 20 minutes, but before I do that, I usually like to scrape the sides of my bowl and get this into a more uniform shape. It's just a personal preference. I don't think this step is necessary. I just like when my dough looks nice and neat. But yeah, we're gonna let this rest for about 20 minutes so that the flour can absorb some of that water, and then we'll come back and start folding the dough. All right, we're gonna go ahead and start stretching and folding our dough. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna come up from one side and stretch the dough and fold it to meet the other side. Now, I like to imagine the dough is a clock, and you just go all around the clock until the dough is in a tight ball and isn't so stretchy. Now for this dough, I'm probably gonna need to go around 2 times. We are going to cover this up and let it rise. All right, like I said, guys, I've got to go head out to work. I'm gonna go get that bread, and I'll see you guys in about 8 hours, and we'll start making our pizza. Hey, I'm back. I know this is gonna seem like a pretty quick transition for you guys, but the dough's been sitting for about 8 hours, so let's go ahead and check on it. As you can see, we've got a lot of air bubbles inside of the dough. It's obviously risen a lot, which is a great sign. So we're going to go ahead and get these pre-shaped. We're going to turn them out onto a floured countertop and get them ready to go. So I'm going to flour my countertops pretty well. This is kind of a hydrated dough, and I don't really want my pizza dough sticking to my countertop, so I'm going to give it a pretty good amount of flour. And we're just going to use our dough scraper to release this from the bowl. All right, so this actually makes 2 pizzas. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my dough scraper to divide the dough in half into about 2 equal pieces. And what we wanna do is we wanna get these shaped into kind of a round, flattish circle. And you may need to dust your dough with a little bit more flour if it's really wet. And I just want to press down just a little bit. Again, this is just a pre-shape, so we just kind of want to get these kind of flat and kind of round. All right, we're gonna let these rest for about 30 minutes and then we will get them shaped into actual pizza crust shapes. So while our dough is resting, I want to just really quickly talk about the equipment that you're going to need in order to cook the pizzas. So the book says that you can use a pizza stone in your oven. You can also use an inverted baking sheet, and I'm gonna show you what that looks like. All it would entail is taking a pizza sheet and turning it on this side, lining it with parchment paper. But I was actually able to find a round baking sheet, and I actually got this on clearance at Walmart, so this was about $2. So I'll be using that in our oven today. But what we're actually going to be doing is following the recipe by the book and cooking one of the pizzas in the oven as instructed, but we're also going to be throwing one of the pizzas on the grill. Using a grill is the closest you're going to get to a wood-fired pizza. Another great thing about it is it's going to have that smoky taste, and it's really going to get that crust nice and crispy for you. Now, I have made grilled pizzas before and the results turned out amazing. I didn't use this particular recipe when I made them, but they turned out so good. So I'm very excited to try this recipe on the grill. Now, I have tried this recipe before just using the oven, and the only thing that I can say about it is the recipe actually does get a little bit confusing when it talks about how you're going to place your dough onto a pizza peel, which for those of you that don't know is the wooden paddle that you slide your dough into the oven on. I don't actually own one of those. I don't think that they're necessary for this recipe. I would just say parchment paper is going to be your best friend for this recipe. While our dough continues to rest, I'm going to go ahead and preheat my oven to the highest possible setting. Today I'm going to be setting it to 475. I want to go ahead and preheat my baking sheet inside of the oven, and if you have a pizza stone, the same goes for that as well. You'll just want that pizza stone or baking sheet really hot when you transfer the pizza dough onto it. You'll also want the baking rack on the lowest possible position in your oven. Okay, it's been about 30 minutes. Our dough is done resting. I'm going to go ahead and show you how we are going to shape these into pizza crusts. So the pizza that's actually going into the oven will have all of the sauce, toppings, cheese, everything on it while we bake it. The grilled pizza that we're doing is actually going to be cooked on both sides for a few minutes just to get it brown. We'll remove it from the heat, add all the toppings, and then put it back on the grill for about 10 minutes so that it can become a completed pizza. We're going to be transferring this over to some parchment, and I've got a little bit of flour on mine just to keep it from sticking. And what we want to do first is start going around the dough, pressing it gently to create your crust. You're just going to want to place your hands under the dough and allow gravity to do a lot of this work for you. And just turn the dough like this. And when you hold it up, it should be stretching the dough for you. As it turns out, shaping pizza dough is a little bit harder than it looks. If you stretched your dough a little bit too thin like I did and you create a couple holes in the middle, just repair them like I'm doing here and just patch the dough as best as you can. Keep stretching the thicker parts of the dough until you get the desired shape and size that you'd like. Now I'm working on my second piece of dough. Now this dough is actually going to go on the grill. So I'm doing the same method. I'm pressing around the edges to create a crust. Now I will say on this particular piece of dough, I added more flour than I did to the other piece of dough that I just did. This one was a lot easier to manage because it wasn't as sticky and I was able to stretch this one pretty easily without it sticking to the countertops. Now, the method here is to just get your hands underneath the dough and gently turn and spin the dough to kind of stretch it. And use your hands to continue stretching until you get the desired shape and size. Now, instead of transferring this over to parchment paper, I'm actually going to be putting this on a floured glass cutting board so I can gently slide this onto the grill. If you have a wooden cutting board, that would probably work best. Now before we start cooking, you'll also want to be sure to have all of your toppings prepared. Now here are a few of my favorites that I'll be using today, but feel free to add whatever you like. This can be a fun, stress-free meal if you're well prepared. If you're using a grill, you'll want to go ahead and preheat that, and we are setting ours to 500 degrees today. Now, before we turned the dough out onto the grill, we did oil the grates with a little bit of vegetable oil. Now, you'll just want to gently turn the dough out and stretch the dough to the desired shape. You're going to want to cook it on each side for about 45 seconds until it is nice and brown on each side. After about a minute, it should look something like this, and you can go ahead and flip that over and let it cook for another minute or so. And we are keeping ours right on direct heat. Now, I'm going to go ahead and remove this from the grill so we can add our toppings. Now once your toppings are added, you can go ahead and gently slide this back onto the grill. We cooked ours on direct heat on a fairly low heat for about 10 minutes. Now it's time to go ahead and prepare our pizza for the oven. Now you'll want to start by drizzling olive oil and rubbing that all over the crust. Then you can go ahead and start adding your toppings. You'll then need to remove your hot baking sheet or pizza stone from the oven and slide your dough onto it. We're now going to move the pizza to the lower rack of the oven. I cooked ours for about 20 minutes, but it could vary, so just be sure to watch yours to make sure it's not overcooking. And here is how our grilled pizza turned out. So the top didn't get too done in the grill, so I actually put this on the top rack of our oven and let it cook for about 5 more minutes. Okay, here is our grilled pizza, and I just want to see if you can hear the crust on this one. Very crispy on the outside, and this one just, as you can see, it's a little bit more flimsy. That's partially my doing for stretching the dough a little bit too thin, but I'm gonna go ahead and give these a taste test. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and try the one we cooked in the oven. So it's really good. I wanted to remind everyone again, be mindful of where your heating element is located. Mine is at the top of my oven, and I know that the book calls for the oven rack to be on the lowest position in your oven. Mine took about 20 minutes in the oven, and the bottom is still, I mean, there's hardly any color at all. The last time I made this recipe, I had the dough a little bit thicker, and it was the same result. So I was hoping by stretching it a little thinner this time, it would get a little bit of a crispier crust, but that still didn't happen, and I definitely think that is because of the heating element and where it's located in my oven. But I'm gonna go ahead and try the grilled pizza. So the grilled pizza just has a flavor and a crust that just won't quit. That crust is so crispy, and the actual dough is just so chewy on the inside. It got such a good color on the bottom too. I was really happy with how the grilled pizza turned out. I think we did a good job on this one. Okay, we are going to let my dog do a taste test as well so she can compare the differences. This is Duchess. She loves pizza and she loves bread. Here is the oven pizza. Like that one? And here's the one we did on the grill. I think Dutch liked the grilled one better. Okay, God. In the end, I'm very happy with how these turned out. I mean, who doesn't love pizza, am I right? So if you decide to do these in the oven or on the grill, I don't think you're going to be disappointed with how they turn out. As I mentioned earlier, I think this would be a really great date night idea, and I think if you have kids as well, they would love to get involved and help you cook dinner and add their own toppings to their pizza. And an added bonus, cooking outside is so much fun, especially when the weather's nice. So if you have a grill, whether it's gas or charcoal, I definitely recommend looking into that if you decide to try this recipe at home. Be sure to tune in next week because we are going to be doing the last no-knead recipe in this book. It is a Focaccia, and I am so excited to try that one with you guys. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, be sure to subscribe, and thanks again for watching Doughin' It with Paigey. See you guys next time.